Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Liz Forminard, Senior Counsel in the Law Department at Johnson & Johnson, and this is my colleague, Philomena McArthur, a Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs with one of our operating companies. We're very pleased to be here today on behalf of the Johnson & Johnson family of companies. We believe this is an important hearing, and we want to thank FDA for holding it and for allowing us an opportunity to participate. We've already learned a lot today just from being here to listen. We believe J&J has a unique perspective on this topic because of our experience across several regulatory categories. We have prescription drugs and biologics, medical devices, and over-the-counter products within our family of companies. And we've been engaging online to a certain extent for a while, but like other companies, we're still figuring out how to fully and appropriately join in the conversation. I'm going to talk for a few minutes in response to the first question posed by FDA, and my colleague will address question number 2. So it's inevitable at this point in the day that you're going to hear a lot of the same themes coming through. And one of the common themes that's been emerging is that, as we've heard from virtually every presenter here today, people increasingly go online to search for health information and to find out what they need to know about disease states and treatment options. And companies need to be there too. We need to join the online conversation. We believe that effective and responsible engagement online by companies where and when people are searching for information can help advance health literacy and encourage the safe use of our products. And it also provides an opportunity for companies to communicate their own messages. So FDA has asked the question, for what online communications are manufacturers responsible? In order to begin to respond to this question, we need to first accept that responsibility will differ based on who's talking, what they're saying, and where they're saying it online. We need to consider, for example, what type of product is involved. Is it a prescription drug, a Class 1 device, or an over-the-counter drug? They all have different regulatory regimes, and they're going to behave differently as those regimes apply in the online context as well. We need to consider the audience we're talking to. For example, companies will likely have different rules of engagement for consumer forums versus those populated exclusively by doctors. We also need to think about the topic or intent of the forum. And finally, the medium is important too. What are the user expectations or the technical limitations we've been hearing so much about today? Those control how information will be shared or collected in a particular online community or vehicle. So these considerations will help us determine how much companies can really be expected to control particular content, and whether the company would even be able to correct, delete, or clarify information in a given medium. I think we can all agree that it's difficult to define what it means to be responsible for content in this evolving space. And I hope FDA will agree that there are certain things that companies are not responsible for from a regulatory standpoint. For instance, we don't think companies should be responsible for policing the entire internet for information about their products, nor for content that is superimposed on their sites or other content that they don't and can't control. The next slide sets forth an initial proposal for consideration by the agency of what companies ought to be responsible for. It seems obvious to us that companies should be responsible for company-created content posted by or on behalf of the company, whether that content is posted on a company site or on a third-party site. It also seems obvious to us that companies should be responsible and transparent in disclosing material connections between the company and its online content. User-generated content, though, is more difficult to address because it doesn't fall neatly into existing categories. But one thing we do believe is that user-generated content should not be treated the same as company-created content, and, for example, should not be considered promotional labeling or advertising. Where we simply don't create content and can't control it, there's no reasonable regulatory basis to hold a company responsible for statements of an unaffiliated third party. And that doesn't mean a company couldn't choose to monitor unaffiliated content, just that it shouldn't be regulatorily mandated to do so. We'd like to comment a little further on another issue the agency asked about. company obligations of transparency. As mentioned a moment ago, we believe that anyone acting on behalf of a company, whether in a bricks and mortar context or online, should be open and transparent about the association with that company. More specifically, we think that disclosure should be required for any third-party content provider who receives compensation from a company for posting content. In addition, we believe that any third-party site over which the company has editorial control also falls within that rule of transparency. This is our last slide on question 1, and I'll now turn it over to Philomena McArthur to discuss question number 2.
Good afternoon. Clearly, this new environment demands a new approach. But what we're not here to advocate today is an entirely new regulatory framework for online activities. But what we would like to propose is that we apply flexibility within our current framework and adapt our existing approaches to an evolving digital world. As Liz mentioned earlier, the approach to regulatory responsibility can vary depending upon the product involved, the audience, the topic, and the medium, and this is true for the application of technology as well. We need to use technology solutions and adapt them to the expectations of the internet user. When people are searching online for treatment options in a particular disease state, we want to be there to be able to provide them with the answer to their questions. We want to be able to provide them with accurate, timely, and credible information about our own products. On the next slide are some suggestions for what flexibility might look like. But before we get there, I'd like to comment a little bit about the relevance of internet users' perspectives and experience. Whether or not those of us in this room use social networking sites and other online tools in our personal lives, I think we can all agree that these new technological advances offer us easier ways to rapidly obtain information as and when we're looking for it and need it. And it is precisely that convenience and immediacy that creates such a huge potential for online tools to increase and improve health literacy. When people want to get information quickly, one of the first places they go is the internet. In fact, the first place I went to find out about transportation options for this meeting was to the internet, and I was able to quickly find the information I was looking for, even though I had to sort of click around a little bit to obtain all of the information that I needed. While this example is a bit simplistic, it does illustrate the type of change we're talking about in terms of information access and immediacy. The internet is where people go for information, so we have an unprecedented opportunity to provide important information about our products in formats and locations that suit the expectations and needs of the audiences searching for that information.